Welcome to Death and Aliens, an in-depth look at horror and sci-fi TV from two friends who vaguely know what they're doing. I'm MK,
And I'm Courtney.
and Courtney. How are you?
Well, better than last week. Better than last
Hmm,
week.
good.
Um, Last week I saw you. That
Mm-hmm.
was the last happy moment of my life. And then I worked, and then I
Mm-hmm.
had my new Wednesday. Have I talked about my new Wednesday meetings yet?
I think you have, but like vaguely. Like it's only been a
Okay.
couple weeks since we started doing them.
Right. So on Wednesdays I go to Bordeaux, and those who wish to meet me there are welcome. But I go every Wednesday at 4:30, and I have a martini or two and dinner, and I get my life together. And this is my
Mm.
new thing. And it is just incredible. I have planned an entire new business I'm working with. I have gotten I've like caught up on listening to like music and stuff I want to do. I've been doing watching YouTube videos that are teaching me things I need to learn about my business, and I've ordered like books and stuff to like read about like the new business because I'm trying to do more
Fantastic.
like agency stuff, and it's just like really freeing. It's been really great. And
I love that.
so that's my new thing. And then Thursday through Sunday, I was a dead person. I was sick. So I didn't accomplish a lot other than watching shows. And I finally watched the new season of Ginny and Georgia. And if you guys haven't watched it yet, highly recommend. It's a pretty good show. Have you seen it?
I have not, but my eighth graders have been talking about it, so I knew it existed.
Yeah, it's a good one. It's a good one. Bam. So how are you?
Well, I would love to tell you about what I did last week. For those of you who don't know, we recorded on Monday the 16th, and it is now Saturday the 28th. So, like, it's been a minute. But as I try to remember last week, I literally know nothing. Nothing. Literally, none of last week is in my brain. Um, I know that we recorded on Monday, and I had a pretty good day. And then I worked on Tuesday. Obviously, I worked the whole rest of the week. I don't know why I'm saying that like I didn't.
Just Tuesday.
And Wednesday after work, I was supposed to go to my chiropractor, and I was running late as always. And at the time that I was supposed to be getting to the chiropractor, my chiropractor's receptionist called me, and she was like, "Hey, where are you?" And I started like panic explaining everything that had gone wrong in my life. Um, but then it turned out she was calling to make sure I wasn't there because there was a shooting at an apartment complex a block away from the chiropractor's office, and the whole apartment complex was in shelter in place, and there were police like blocking roads, so I wouldn't have been able to physically get to the chiropractor, and they needed to be able to get home. So she was like, "Can we just like do this Saturday morning?" I was like, "We sure can." Like, that is great. I'm gonna go home now. Like,
Jesus Christ. I don't know how you just keep surviving. I'm
right.
happy you keep surviving. Let me start
Thank
there.
you.
I'm happy you keep surviving. It's not a
Well,
critique.
the other thing about this was that as I was driving home, needing to go to the chiropractor and then going home, I also had literally no gas in my car, but I didn't get paid till Thursday. So I was like, it's gonna be fine. I'm gonna get there. I'm gonna get home. Everything's gonna be great. I got home. I parked my car and was like, not touching this until the morning when I can put gas in it. I was doing stuff with my parents. We had dinner. It was lovely. I shut my toe in the door of the refrigerator and like tore off the side of the skin of my toe on my middle toe, and the last two did not even get bruised.
How I don't you gotta play the lottery this week. I don't know how you made it that far.
But then Thursday morning, I woke up, got gas and Starbucks, and got to work early.
Early?
Yeah.
Whew.
So, like, my life goes in waves of almost getting shot and breaking my toe, and then the next day, most productive day of my life. Like, I
I
don't
mean,
know how I'm alive.
look, I feel that. While I have not been in a shooting recently, um, I have had a lot of ups and downs that have just kind of
Yeah.
been sleeping a lot to
Mhm.
counteract that.
Well, and because, like sometimes you go through weeks where you have a flare up of dermatitis, which for those of you who don't know is just like mini like eczema. Like I get little tiny, tiny rashes random places on the upper half of my body. Never on your legs. That's a weird thing about dermatitis is because I had a friend who also like just started getting dermatitis rashes. Never on your legs.
Really?
Yeah.
Huh.
But I had a flare up because of how cold it's been lately on my eyelid. I don't know if you know, but you can't put steroid cream on your eyelid.
Right, correct. Yes.
So for
Yes.
like 3 days, my eyes hurt and I could barely see, but I couldn't do anything until the rash cleared up on its own.
So you can't get it on your leg,
But
normal
you can
spot,
get it on your eyeball.
but you can get it on your eyelid. Yeah, great. Wonderful.
Yeah. So I am thriving. Thriving.
Yes.
Um, and I think that that is probably a good time to pause and breathe and find out how to spiritually thrive. Because clearly, physically, we're not doing it.
Yes, correct. So sometimes you just got to give yourself the pep talk. Like, hello, you badass bitch. Don't be sad. You're doing great. Love you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes you do.
Sometimes.
I think I probably need that more than I give it to myself, actually.
Yeah. Heard that. Heard.
We're also recording 4 episodes of the podcast today because next week is insane for both of us. And so if it feels like we're not telling you a lot about our lives, it's because we have to stretch it over 4 episodes.
And we also
And
are going to
also,
try and do 4 episodes before I go to work today. So,
yeah.
you know that.
This episode is an exciting one, kind of, because
It
we're doing
is.
something different. It's exciting because it's different, not because it's good.
Okay.
Well, okay. We'll get there. I have mixed feelings.
I don't, but that's fine.
Okay.
We'll get there.
So this today we are discussing Stargate Origins, Catherine, which was originally a 10 episode web series that then got condensed and re-edited into a feature length film. Um,
Which
it
makes
can
more sense than, I mean, I didn't watch the 10 episodes, but it makes sense as a movie.
It does make sense as a movie. There were early while we were watching it, I was trying to figure out where the episode breaks would have been.
Yeah.
But they did a really good job of editing it in a way where only once was it obvious that
Hmm.
that's where an episode ended.
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, I appreciate that. Whoever like the second tier editor, like the secondary editor once they re-released it was I appreciate that. Because the other thing is all 10 episodes were released because it was a web series, they were all released together. They were released on the same day. So I'm not really sure why they didn't
Why?
just do it as a movie to begin with.
Yeah. Agreed.
So there's that. This release date was March 8th, 2018. And I knew it had come out significantly later than
I lived
Stargate.
here.
Yeah.
Okay.
A month later, I was at your apartment.
You
This
were.
was
Oh my gosh.
yeah, no, like less than a month. Because the last week of March, first week of April was my trip to say goodbye to everybody before telling.
Yeah.
So like within like within 20 days of this episode coming out, I was on my way to your apartment.
Good times. Good times we had.
Yeah. We did have a good time. I couldn't figure out what I was doing on this day, but probably just like panic crying about the fact that my life was changing drastically in 2 months because I did that a lot in March. Um,
I mean, I also did that a lot in that March. I was doing my last semester of law school and trying to find a job and had no money and no friends. So, same.
um, but yeah, I knew it had come out significantly later, but I didn't realize just how much later until I was researching it, and I was like, holy shit, great.
As the series ended in like,
2008.
okay, okay. I was thinking oh six for some reason.
Oh, no, because 2007, 8 was the 10th season, so it would have ended in
Okay,
2008. Yeah.
okay. Did
Um,
Atlantis start in like,
Atlantis started in 2003, I believe. There were a few seasons of overlap, and then Atlantis went 1 to 2 seasons after, and then Universe was after Atlantis, and that only lasted, I think, 1 or 2 seasons. So, like, the Stargate universe as a whole had only been off the air for maybe 5 to 10 years, but it feels like a lot later. Um,
I mean, I have no point of reference. So,
it was rated 3.9 stars.
okay, okay.
I took the
My
notes.
thoughts.
I took these notes before I watched the episode, like that particular note. And I looked at my parents because we were all watching it together because it was also the first time they had ever seen it. They'd never seen it before. And I go, I'm very nervous to watch this movie. And they were like, why? I go, because the IMDb rating is 3.9 stars, and the worst episode of Stargate to date has only been 6.4 stars. So I'm like hella nervous. And my thoughts on that low of a rating was not that it was necessarily awful. I do think that as a whole, it was unnecessary and cliche. And that's why it was rated as low as it was. I don't think it was poorly done. I think it didn't add to the Stargate universe as a whole for more than two minor details. And I think it was a little cliched.
So I'll talk about this more, but I think
Yeah.
one of the reasons I think it was so lowly rated was, I mean, similar reasons, but like watching it as I mean, I guess I'm a Stargate person now, but like not a real Stargate person.
Right.
I saw it differently. I haven't watched, 30 seasons of Stargate yet, so
Mhm.
I don't know what to expect. So I'm guessing the people that watched this movie are the people that have watched all the Stargate shows. Like even you had watched all the episodes and hadn't watched the movie. And like
Correct.
going through, like I didn't even know this existed until you told me. So it's
Right.
like people who didn't watch Stargate
Didn't.
definitely didn't know this movie existed. And so it was on the same like basis of like I compare it to um Agent Carter. Is that what
Yeah.
Agent Carter, which incredible show, similar style. People didn't know about it and it wasn't released in the typical like Marvel fashion. So people didn't watch it and people didn't like it. It got canceled early. And then people went back and watched it when it got added Disney Plus and they were like, oh my God, I wish I would have known this existed. Like it's now one of my favorite Marvel TV shows. And so I think it had the odds against it starting out.
Yeah. So some of the reviews on IMDb
Yes.
include this one that says 1 out of 10 stars. Can I give a minus 10-star review? I
No.
initially watched the first 4 episodes and stopped watching and gave a bad review. I have since watched the rest of the episodes as I was in a hotel and bored. Was this series done as a joke? As a Stargate fan, I'm disgusted that this was ever allowed to air. Let's just all forget it happened, like the Star Wars holiday TV special. When people are comparing it to the Chewbacca family, that's bad.
I mean, I haven't seen the Star Wars holiday special, but I also haven't seen all of the Star Wars yet.
They're the highest rate review on Stargate or on IMDb is 5 stars, and it calls it the death of the Stargate universe. And that's the highest review. Um, so yeah, it's
The time.
yeah. Yeah, literally this review is written as an obituary and it says Stargate 1994 to 2018. Like, I did not feel that strongly about it, but the internet, very unhappy.
It seems. I spoiler alert, actually really enjoyed the movie. But it also came out in the time of other things I was watching that were similar style, and I understand why people say it doesn't fit into Stargate universe. Because
Yeah.
it felt a lot like I think it was called Timeless that came out as a TV show that also got canceled
Mm,
too early.
yeah.
And
Um, See, my dad and I just thought it was a ripoff of Indiana Jones.
that's probably true. I haven't watched most of the Indiana Jones ones. So
Okay.
I
Um,
think I've seen one.
in other depressing news, the no, the number one movie is not depressing. The number one song and the things that happened in that day are a little bit.
Great.
But so number one movie in March 8th of 2018 was Black Panther.
Yep. Sure
Yeah.
enough.
The number one song was God's Plan by Drake. Um, that was the number one song for a significant amount of the spring of 2018.
Yeah.
I had to replay it last night because I was like, which one is that? And then I played the whole thing and still don't think I know what song that was.
I do, but I'm not a big Drake fan. I like
I
him
am
better from
I'm
Degrassi.
same. I think Drake is a hypocritical,
Overrated.
arrogant, overrated piece of shit. I'm not really a fan, but occasionally I like his stuff. Like I do think some of his music is good if
I mean,
that's
some of
music
it's
that
the
you're
bop,
into. Yeah, some of it's
but I
pop.
don't think it's like changing the world good. I think it's like,
Oh,
oh, I could listen to
yeah.
this again.
Correct. There's nothing genre breaking about it. Um, but this one in particular, I literally listened to it last night and I still can't tell you any part of the song. So I don't know how it was the number one for as long as it was. So that was a
Yeah.
little depressing to me.
I was
Um,
hardcore into my music phase. I had just gotten finished working for Deb and was trying to find another job in music at the time. So I was like real deep in the music world. That was the last time I knew new music.
well, but to be fair, like the charts in that time, um, actually I'm looking at the chart and quite literally I don't really think I like any of these songs.
Fair.
Wow, maybe I just like didn't listen to music that time of my life because this is not.
Give me some other examples. I'll tell you if they were good.
Okay. March 2018. All Right by CYN.
That means nothing to me.
It Runs Through Me by Tom Misch.
I don't even know who that is.
My Life by Zhu.
Jew?
ZHU, Zhu.
That's not a person.
This can't be real. Like this here. Oh,
I don't know.
the album March 2018 album releases.
Isn't that
XXX
when
Tentacion.
Damn came out?
I don't know.
I don't know if it was March. It may have been later in the year.
Oh,
But
is
that was
that
Kendrick Lamar's last year album until this year, until last year, I guess. We're in a new year now.
no, okay. Harper's Bazaar article. Best songs to listen to in March of 2018. Top Off by DJ Khaled featuring Beyonce, Jay-Z, and Future.
I hate DJ Khaled.
I love DJ Khaled.
I hate him. I think he's a trash human.
I hate Beyonce.
I love Beyonce, but I think DJ Khaled's a trash human and I don't like his music. So,
Till It's Over by Anderson .Paak.
oh, yeah, that's oh my God. Anderson .Paak. You know him?
No.
He's oh my God. I'm sorry, Miss Jackson. Woo. What's the
Oh,
band?
Andre 3000.
Yeah. I
Okay.
think they're the same or together in a band.
Okay. It Runs Through Me. We said we didn't know that. Flowers of the Universe by Sade.
I think it's Sade.
Sade. Oh, it is Sade. You're right. I don't know.
I'm sorry. Damn didn't come out till April, so we weren't there yet.
Literally, I am going through this list of I just went through the list of the best songs of March of 2018 and I knew zero of them. So, oh, here, let's look at Billboard's Hot for that month. Oh, oh. No, this is the first week of March. This is the first week of March 2018. The number two song was Perfect by Ed Sheeran.
Hmm.
And do you know that one? Finesse by Bruno Mars and Cardi B, I know.
No.
Havana by Camila Cabello is still a bop.
Still a bop, yeah, for sure.
Um, oh, Meant to Be by BB Rexa and Florida Georgia Line.
All right, that was also a bop.
Okay, so maybe I did know some of the songs, just clearly not the ones that were the hottest, quote unquote, because I don't think I've ever fallen into that category.
I am also, I'd like to apologize to the hip hop world. These are not the same people.
Oh,
I
okay.
always thought they were the same people, and I'm so sorry that they are not. Wow, that is a lot of my life that I've been confused. Anyway, so I also don't know Anderson .Paak because I always thought he was Andre 3000. So, but I've heard his name.
That's, yeah, that was better than me because I didn't know what we were talking about.
It's fine. It's fine.
The number one book is something I also know nothing about. It's called The Great Alone by Kristen Hanna.
So this is the year that I started doing book reviews for
Perfect. Perfect.
um, authors on air, and so I hadn't read this one because I don't think I'm a Kristen Hanna fan. She also wrote that one everyone else was in love with. She the Goldfinch, or was it the one about the
Um,
winds? There's one about wind.
I have never heard of her until I took the notes
Mhm.
on this book. So,
She's
and I
very popular.
apparently
She's still very popular, and I haven't still haven't read any of her books.
The Nightingale and The
The
Four Winds.
Nightingale
Oh,
and the
and she wrote Firefly Lane, which everybody liked when it came out on Netflix.
Oh yeah, I wanted to read that book. I didn't realize she wrote that. Hmm.
Well, The Great Alone was the number one book that week. It was a historical fiction set in Alaska in the 70s, and I sometimes forget that the 70s counts as historical fiction. So that was
Oh,
difficult for me
right.
to. I wasn't alive in the 70s, so I don't know why I'm shocked by that, but I think it's because I like to read books that were written
In
in
the
the
20s.
1870s.
Or yeah, the other 20s, not the ones we live in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, but in terms of very depressing things that happened, this is the day that Toys R Us announced that they will be closing all US stores.
Well, thank God they're back now. So,
Right. This was also the day the Parkland shooter was finally charged.
oh, good. The good news of that.
The
Got
good
it.
news of that part, and it's also the day that Donald Trump agreed to go to North Korea and meet Kim Jong-un, which did not turn out.
Did not.
I mean, to be fair, it didn't really turn out badly, but nothing really came of it either.
Nothing good came out of it.
Does
Right.
anything good ever come of talking to Kim
Anything? No,
Jong-un?
absolutely not. No.
So, it was a day. It
Yeah.
was
Well, happy news is that Toys R Us is back now, and they had really cute windows at Macy's this year. So
yay.
they have taken over like half of the Macy's in Times Square or
Oh,
Herald Square,
really?
whatever it technically is. Yeah, because Macy's is the one that bought them out.
That checks out.
Yeah.
Um, this movie thing was directed by Mercedes Bryce Morgan. To be fair, IMDb says she directed 9 of the episodes, but it did not give me another name of a director. So I don't know who directed the 10th or if she directed all 10 and just didn't credit herself on one of them. I don't know.
I think we
That
should
was
just
weird.
credit her for all 10.
Yeah. Um, she's kind of an up and coming director. She only has 2 feature films, but they were both in TIFF last year, the Toronto International Film Festival.
Want you to know, you said she's up and coming, and I was like, man, it's taken a long time. And I was like, no, that was 4 years ago.
That was 4 years ago. Yeah,
Okay,
yeah,
so she's
yeah.
actually up and coming.
She's like genuinely right now up and coming. She
Right,
had
right.
2 movies in the Toronto International Film Festival last year. She is a queer Latina filmmaker, and she's directed a lot of shorts, and none of them are things that I've seen. But the thing that she directed that I have any familiarity with is she is one of the directors on Todrick Hall's Forbidden music video project,
I'm
which
I don't know which one that is. I know Todd Call, but I haven't watched one of
So
their videos.
Forbidden was one of his albums that he did the whole album, like the whole album was one single movie for a music video where they all just went into each other. And
Very cool.
it was a concept album about a world where basically black people were the majority in America, and like racism was only directed at white people, and everyone was straight phobic instead of homophobic. And
Very interesting.
it was really interesting. It was like basically everything that was going on in the world in 2018, but
Oh,
like in reverse, so you could like see how pointless some of it is.
yeah.
Um,
It's called Forbidden.
it's called Forbidden,
I'm gonna watch that.
and like a lot of people did um cameos in it, or like even just in the music videos and stuff.
Taylor Swift cameoed in one of them, and he
Hmm.
cameoed in hers for that album that
Yeah,
came out that year.
yeah,
I remember this. I didn't watch it yet, but I do recall this
yes.
existing now.
But like, Jennifer Holliday was in one of the videos and stuff. Like, it was like a big people,
Yeah.
like a lot of stuff, and she was one of the directors on that project. So
Oh,
I have
very
seen
cool.
some of her work in some way. It was written by Justin Michael Terry, whose only previous writing credit was a short, and Mark Ilvidson, who also has zero other writing credits. Which, to be fair, as it was originally a web series and it was only 5 years ago and it was mostly like unknown people, that doesn't necessarily mean they're bad writers. It just means that they haven't done anything that is like public world stuff. Like, I don't,
Right.
you know what I mean? Like, it's
And
just,
they don't
I,
have the Stargate experience. I mean, it doesn't sound like they pulled anyone from the original stuff or even the newer
no,
stuff that was
right.
original. And so, I mean, that makes sense why, Stargate people would riot. But
Well, the other thing is it was originally written as fan fiction.
yeah, that
So
makes sense.
it kind of has the 50 Shades problem where it was written as fan fiction and then somehow like pushed into canon in a way that doesn't actually necessarily make sense.
Right.
I don't I didn't hate it. I don't think it should be considered canon.
I also don't think it's canon and I don't even know enough, but I also really liked it. So,
The stars, we have Ellie Gall, who played Catherine, who has no other major acting credits at all.
yeah, I didn't recognize anyone.
Ilum Orion, who played he played the German officer Brooke. He was in an episode of NCIS LA and an episode of Code Black, but he's again one of those people who's just like breaking into things and getting in small bit stuff. Philip Alexander, who played James Beale, he was in an episode of Mandalorian. He was in an episode of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was in an episode of Lucifer. Again, not one of those just getting his foot in the door kind of things.
Yeah.
And then Siobhan Aladdin, who played Wasif, and he actually has the most extensive credit history of any of them, but only in Swedish film and television. He was originally born in Kurdistan and emigrated to Sweden as a child, grew up there, got really famous in Swedish film and TV, moved to New York, went to school at Stella Adler, did this, moved back to Sweden and got a bunch more starring roles, and then kind of came back in and just within like the last year has kind of like started doing US TV.
Good for him.
Yeah, and they're all young
Wild
people.
story.
Like they're all like young, crazy,
Mhm.
like trying to break into Hollywood, did some indie web series
Right,
kind of
right.
thing. Like they're not the kind of people we're normally talking about on the show. And I found a lot of nothing about them, which is fair.
Yeah. But I think it's fun to kind of, talk about the people we don't know about. It helps, our listeners now know who they are and
Yeah.
so it's
And if
nice.
you also hated this movie, don't tell them, I guess, because it might
If
hurt
you
their
hated this
feelings.
movie, you can message MK. If you loved the movie, you can message me. So
Um, Also, I
I
don't
don't
know
want to hear
where
negativity.
I don't know where you watched it. Where did you end up watching it?
I rented it on Amazon.
Okay. I did not, but this is my commercial for the day. I looked up on the internet where it was free. And I read, like, I was like, just where do you stream it? And I saw all the things. I was like, okay, Google Movies and YouTube and Amazon, you can rent it for blah, 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 blah. It's free on Tubi. It's free on Roku. It's free on Redbox. Um, my dad has a Roku account, but apparently Roku is not an app on the PlayStation. So,
No, it's only on the Roku itself. Yeah.
right, which I don't fucking know what that is. So that's
My
fine.
parents have one.
Okay.
They have
So, but then while we were looking for it, Redbox popped up as an app, and my dad goes, "Isn't that like the thing where you like rent movies?" And I go, "Yeah, but like apparently it's free. I don't know what it is." So we downloaded the Redbox app and we searched for the movie, and it said watch free with commercials. Fine.
Great. That's what I've been doing anyways with Stargate.
Exactly. There were 2 commercial breaks, and they each only had one single 15-second car spot, and that's it. If you need to watch something that is free with commercials and Redbox is an option, 10 out of 10 recommend.
Good to know.
It was so long before the first commercial that we forgot we were watching it with commercials.
Ugh, love that.
Yeah. So
Love.
yeah. So I would recommend. That was my little plug for the day.
Excellent. Excellent.
I tried to take notes the way I would take notes of an episode with like the plot stuff.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know that I did it well. So let's just basically we start this movie off. First of all, the credit scene is like a weird, awkward, like music video shot of random parts of an Egyptian god's body. And I didn't take notes about that because I was uncomfortable.
Fair.
Then we start the actual story. In Giza in 1928 with baby Catherine on her dad's expedition to the Gate, which is the same opening scene from the 1994 Stargate movie of them finding the Stargate.
Well,
So then, yeah, and I was like, okay, I was in it. We flash forward to 10 years, and Catherine is working on researching the Gate, and she's there with this guy named James. He is a British Army officer in Egypt, and she's introducing him to her father. She clearly likes him. They had really good chemistry.
They did. I liked, yeah.
But her dad shows up.
I thought she was a good actress. I didn't think she was bad.
Oh, no, I didn't think so at all.
Yeah.
She didn't feel like Catherine to me.
No, she felt like Agent Carter.
Yeah, like that. And that's the thing is I didn't hate the story. It didn't feel quite right. Like we've seen so much of Catherine in the actual show.
I do agree. She did not feel like Catherine.
It didn't feel like Catherine. Her dad felt more like her dad than she did like Catherine.
Yeah, I didn't feel like I knew her dad as well, so it didn't.
Right. And so all we know is that he like, well, but actually even then, no, because her dad obviously, like, yes, her dad loved her, but her dad lied to her face about Ernest and all of that stuff. And like, that doesn't feel like something this guy would have done. Like,
right.
So again, my problems with it have less to do with the story itself and more to do with the fact that
the connection it's supposed to be.
The characters it's supposed to be, it's just not true.
Yeah, and that's totally fair. Totally fair.
They're there because, and he's telling her that a colleague from Germany sent a weird letter, like saying goodbye that didn't like make sense. And then that was like the end of that scene. It was kind of weird. It felt a little choppy in the beginning. When they were in.
I think that was because it was meant to be a web series, because I felt that same thing, and I was like, it feels kind of choppy, but I think it was made to feel choppy because it was made to be episodes.
10 minutes at a time, yeah.
Yeah. So I, yeah.
Um, they this we flash forward. Wow, that was we flash forward to after dinner, and Catherine and they're talking about how without that guy from Germany, they're going to have to shut everything down. They don't have the money to keep doing the research, and they're not really getting very far. So they're going to
Right.
have to leave. But Catherine doesn't want to leave because she got a job at the museum, and she's going to stay in Egypt. But he is angry because he wants her to go with him because needs her help working on the gate, and they have a fight. And as they're like emotionally blowing up and having weird, clearly web series scenes of them having feelings, a
Right.
Nazi shows up.
Because what else?
Right. Um, but so like this Nazi officer shows up and he's got like a lady with him who's like filming him discovering the gate.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he like tells Dr. Langford what the gate really is and all of this information about the gate.
Right. And so this is my first question. The Stargate, I thought Catherine and her
Yeah,
father had the first Stargate. So
yeah.
how do these Nazis know about the Stargate?
You are asking all of the questions that don't make sense. Literally. It
Because
doesn't.
like theoretically this storyline should not have happened at all
Right.
because they were the only two that knew about the Stargate.
Well, to be fair, they are still the only two that know about the Stargate at the end of this movie. And even then
Right.
they don't really know.
Right, but you think they would have mentioned Nazis in the original show if that was part of it.
They do kind of.
Okay.
In the episode where we get the flashback to Ernest and Catherine working on the gate, it's 1946.
Right. But this is what,
This is
20 years
not
before?
this is 1938.
Oh, okay.
So 1938, the rise of Nazism. 1946, they are actually figuring things out about the gate, and they talk about the fact that there are people who should not be able to have their hands on this power because they will use it wrongly.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's kind of vague. But also, this movie makes it very clear that this guy was not acting on any actual like decree from Germany. He was doing it to try to get himself to be more impressive to Hitler.
Right.
So no one else had this information.
But where
Where
did
he
he get it from?
right where he got the journal and took all these notes, that is still a question. But to be fair, Catherine and her dad had that journal before they figured anything out,
Yeah.
and we never knew where that came from either.
I guess that's fair
Right,
ish.
like they do kind of fix all the plot holes they create. They just shouldn't have written an episode, like an entire series based on plot holes. Like, you know what I mean?
Right, right, right. I would have made it more about the discovery and more about the relationship between her and her father and then maybe meeting Ernest in the end instead of
Right.
this.
But also like this is quite literally the plot of Indiana Jones down to the awkward young Egyptian boy who comes to help them. Like it's really, really bad how much of a not original story it is.
I see.
Um,
And I mean, it is
so
fan fiction, so maybe it's supposed to be like a mashup of Indiana Jones and Stargate fan fiction, you know?
maybe that's where we're going. But the Nazi guy tells them that their German colleague was killed, but also it seems, it seems to me that this Nazi guy got the information from the German colleague that was helping Catherine and her father. So maybe that is where the knowledge part came from, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Yeah.
But then they dial the gate, and Langford is like freaked out because apparently up to this point he never had any concept that this could be a doorway. He thought it was like a Rosetta Stone, but like that is one big ass Rosetta Stone, my
Yeah.
dude.
He said that and I was like, oh, okay.
Um, and the Nazi is like, it's fine. And sends him through the gate, and Catherine is like watching, and then he goes after him and like takes a bunch of stuff and people and like leaves Catherine behind. So she steals the Nazi car and goes to find James. Like,
As she
okay,
should.
yeah. Um, the Nazi and Dr. Langford go to the other side, and we see a DHD. And see that they're in a temple. And we see the three suns, so we know that it is Abdos.
Hmm.
They don't tell us that, but based on the fact that that's all they knew the gate could do to begin with, and the fact that it's an Egyptian temple with three suns, we can pretty much guarantee
And to
that
be
that's.
fair, if I was producing this with the idea that Stargate people would watch it and theoretically non-Stargate people would watch it, I probably wouldn't go into the history of like, this is
Oh
what this
no.
place is. So
Well,
I think that
even
was actually
yeah.
a good move on the.
Yes, there were a few things that they did that I actually really liked, because they do kind of give you hints into things
Mhm.
in the future, um, that did well. So like having this clearly be Avados and setting things up that the people who know the story will know, but also just having it be like, oh my God, Egyptian temple, whoa, for the people who don't know what's going
Like me.
on. Yeah. Um, so then James is has his buddy Wasif, who is an Egyptian translator for them.
Okay,
Um,
Daniel.
well, yeah, aka Daniel, but also aka the little boy from Indiana Jones, aka literally every Nazi era story that is set with some kind of military operation that has a random like person who is from that culture who tells them how to do things. And not even Nazi era. Anytime you have any story with a military envoy, you always have that one character that is the guy who can speak the language.
Yep.
Like I was just thinking, I used to watch this British comedy that was really fucked up called Bluestone 42, about a British army in Afghanistan who was a bomb squad, and like one of the main characters was their guy who actually was part of the Afghan village who just translated for them. Like everything does that.
Right, right.
Um, so they go back. They have three of them ambush the one Nazi that was left with Catherine, and they fight him. And they laugh at her because she goes to shoot him, but then just hits him over the head with a gun.
Yeah. Because she doesn't want to kill him. She's a good
Yeah,
person.
right. Back on Abydos, Brucha and Langford meet an Egyptian queen, and Brucha tries to attack her, but she attacks first and kills one of the Nazis. And like, you never get really too upset to see a Nazi die.
Right.
Um, Langford is convinced that they're in the past because they're speaking the language of the pharaohs, and um, back in Egypt, Catherine is trying to explain to the boys what is happening, and together they all dial the gate. And there's a very drawn out and extended scene that is funny, but not really plot heavy, with the James and Wasif trying to hand crank the gate.
Right. Yeah.
Um, there were some really good comedy moments
Hmm.
that were that I liked, but they didn't add anything to the story because it wasn't fun. Like the overall plot, it wasn't funny. Like the movie wasn't funny. It was like really, really dark and dramatic. And then there would be like these random like 3 minute like segments of just like super funny stuff. And I was like, what?
I mean, being that's like being a web series. They're trying to and being so fresh to this acting and writing.
Yeah.
They're trying to follow the like typical method you use. They have their what is it called? The like the comedy break. I can't remember what
Hmm.
it's called. They're having their seriousness. They're trying to follow an entire storyline throughout. They have their comedy breaks. They have their three main characters. Like it's very like fill in the blank.
Cliche.
Yeah,
Yeah,
which is totally fine. But I mean, and I enjoyed it for what it was. But I also looked at it through the lens of I don't know everything about Stargate, obviously. And also, I haven't watched this Indiana Jones for speaking of, so obviously. And I also saw it from the sense of this is meant to be a web series. So I went in thinking this is going to be halfway done. And it
hmm.
was like mostly done, even if it was cliche and had these elements. So I was pleasantly surprised based on what I went in thinking.
See, and I was, I'm being harder on it in talking about it than I actually was in watching it.
Right.
Like in watching it, I watched it and I laughed. Like, but talking about it and dissecting it, I'm finding that I have a lot of issue with the pacing
Mm-hmm.
because I don't mind serious things having funny moments, but I don't think they did it well.
And
And I don't know if that would change if I was watching it 10 minutes and then walking
right.
away and then like I don't know if I would have a different opinion, but watching it as like an hour and 40 minutes like total, the pacing of the laughter was wrong.
And that was another thing that I went in thinking I was like I was prepared for the pacing to be wrong because it was set up as a 10-minute webinar or episode. And so like I agree the pacing was off, but I expected it to, like
Yeah, I don't
so
know. I just because I had such a hard time telling where episode breaks
yeah.
were, I had more issue with the pacing. Like if it had been
Mhm.
clearly like a 10-minute mini arc, a 10-minute mini arc, a 10-minute mini
Right.
arc, I would have had, but because it was so not that, I was like, I am confused.
Yeah. And I
Because
think
it's written as if you knew it could have been a movie, but then
right.
also you paced it as if it wasn't a movie, and that was where my
Yes.
issue where it was.
Yes. Correct. Because I also feel like if I was watching as a webinar, it wouldn't have been paced correctly based on how the
Yeah,
movie came out.
exactly.
Like
So
I
it wasn't
feel that.
necessarily that, yeah, it was just that the writing, the plot and the actual writing were two different formats, and then they did both together instead of
Yeah.
picking one.
Right.
And that I think that's where my issue is because I didn't
Mhm.
hate the story, I didn't hate the jokes, I just didn't feel like they went together.
Yeah. I think this was
Um,
an accidental movie that wasn't meant to really get very far, and now it's a movie that people. That's what I think happened.
yeah. James refuses to go through the gate once they get it open because it's insane and it's scary and like good for him because the number of people who just like say fuck it and jump through space holes in this show are very baffling to me. Um, but then James and Wasif do the only correct thing and they say fuck Nazis and go through it. Like,
Right. I
you
mean,
know?
correct. Yes.
Um, so they get to Abydos and the gate closes, but Catherine is like knows what like figures out what the DHD is for and figures out how to use it and then realizes that there is no Earth symbol because we're not on Earth anymore.
Right.
She
Because
doesn't know she doesn't know
right.
that that's what that is, but like she's like guys, that the little pyramid with the sun like not it's not there.
Right. And like we know what that is.
And Wasif is the only one who's like, well, maybe it's because every different place is a different seventh symbol. Man, where was Wasif when Daniel Jackson fucking needed him, right?
Right.
Um, and so they decide to look around for clues, and then Wasif gets attacked, and then so do James and Catherine. And they fight this Gould chick.
I
Um,
like the Gucci of gold though.
oh, for sure. This was
They're
like
so sparkly.
this was 30 years later budget. Go
Right.
like because like 30 years later, even web series budget is better than
It was
prime
20
TV.
years later. We started 98, right?
Yeah, but I was thinking the movie came out in
Oh, in
94,
94. Yeah, yeah,
which means
yeah.
production of the movie probably started in 92.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking that's like almost 30
You're
years
thinking 30
later.
years from then. I was thinking 30 years from the start of the series.
Hmm.
Yeah, I see. I
Right,
follow.
but like 30, like 30 years from the start of Stargate's
Yeah.
conception,
Right.
even the shittiest budget is better than no, like than
Right. Correct.
um and then the cleaning boy tries to help them, but there is like a weird like Three Stooges routine of no one understanding each other. Um, and they are wandering out in the desert. We have this really fucking weird shot of everyone in the desert, like looking beautiful but frustrated, and I was perplexed. Um,
Well, I feel like they were trying to redo the scene from the 94 movie.
yeah, for sure. But again, why?
I don't know. I don't have an
Just
answer
just
for you.
just because I know the inspiration doesn't mean
Right.
I think it makes sense.
Well, I don't think it makes sense either. I'm just saying.
Um, then we go back to the Gould lady trio having conversation. We find out that Ra is coming back and that the Hashis baby is outlawed, not allowed to have babies. Which is a detail that is true in the show, but we have not seen that part of the show yet. We have, yeah, Apophis um, keeping Shari hidden until the baby is born. Um, and then, like, that whole deal, like, the reason that Shari wasn't with him while she was pregnant is because they're still not allowed to do that.
Got it.
But we haven't gotten any of that part of the story yet.
Right, right.
So don't worry, that's coming. my
Great,
mom was
great.
like, my mom was like, it's cool to know that like that was around, like that's a detail that was like a nice detail for Stargate people.
Right.
Um, but then the first time that I got really excited about the movie, we find out that the little cleaning boy's name is Kasuf. I don't know if you immediately recognized that,
I don't.
but my mom and I did. Kasuf is Share's father.
Ah! Oh,
Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so Kasuf is the guy that they meet in the first Stargate
Yeah.
movie when they go to Abydos. That yeah, Kasuf is Share's father.
Oh, oh, that's
Yeah.
nice.
So literally my mom and I were like, "Oh, that's so great." And my dad was like, "What?" And we were like, "Kasuf? Dad, what?" And he was like, "Oh, okay, yeah, no."
That's
So
lovely.
so Kasuf takes them to the village and he's showing them around. And then they get surrounded and attacked by the rest of the people because you know, strangers in
Mhm.
the village. Not a
Stranger
thing that
danger,
happens. Stranger
right?
danger, right? Um, then we have one really good but super cliche cut where they're like, "We are," and then it immediately flips to the other group being like, "Doomed." Um, so the Nazis are upset that they're also being kept prisoners, but then they open their supply truck thing that they brought, and it turns out they brought a video reel of Hitler with them to show the gods of
Right,
the past how great Hitler is.
right. Yes, yes. They did indeed bring that.
Back in the village, they try to escape, and Wasif gets stabbed, and the villagers heal him with a little wand of magic, and everyone is confused.
Yeah, but we don't
Um,
have this wand of magic yet, do we? Have we seen this?
no,
Okay.
we have never seen this. They do kind of explain that later, though. Because different, you know how so far all the different system lords have had different like things that they talk
Right,
about
right.
later, and when they do the weird little skit where they're telling us the backstory, it says that Ra gifted Aset the power to heal, and so that was clearly some technology that she used with her people that we have not seen another system lord use.
And that makes sense. That's fine. I just wanted to make sure it wasn't
Yes.
something I'd forgotten.
No, yes. Back at the temple, Brucha is showing Aset the tape of Hitler, and she is impressed. Not because Hitler is impressive, but because Hitler is unimpressive, and yet all of these people are still following him.
Right.
So either there's more to him than we can see in this video, or the people of Earth are just that desperate to be slaves.
Which is great for us.
Fantastic for Aset. Also, really interesting commentary on the human brain.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, I was like, wow. Especially knowing that it came out in 2018. I was like, wow, that is a thought.
Yeah.
Back in the village, Kasuf and Wasif are like sort of communicating, and we find out that Wasif has a little bit of knowledge of the Coptic language that his grandmother knew, which is closer to the ancient Egyptian than modern Egyptian.
Right.
And so he knows like every eighth word. Kasuf
Which
is
would have been
saying,
good to know earlier than now. I feel like.
which that was a funny moment when Catherine was like, "Why didn't you tell me?" And he's like, "Do you know how hard you are to interrupt?"
Yeah. I was like, that is funny, but I feel like it should have come up before now still. But it's fine. It's fine.
Then Catherine's necklace slips out from her scarf, and Wasif sees the seal of Ra, and everybody freaks out and bows down and starts treating them like gods.
Right.
Which is exactly what happened when they saw Daniel wearing it in the first movie.
Yep. Same these.
So Aset, this is when she decides that she does want to work with them and use them as slaves. And she decides to send them back to Earth with a gift that will explain her alliance with them. But they are dumb and do not have the technology that we have or the knowledge that we have. And so they do not understand why this rock that she is giving them is so important. And then she says the name of the rock, and everyone who's seen more than 3 episodes of Stargate is like, oh my God, that's amazing. Because she tries to give them Nakoda.
Yeah.
They have no understanding of what it is, and Brocha is very unhappy with that deal, which sucks for him because that's a great deal.
Right. He has no idea.
Then we go back to the village. They're having like a weird party. That's where we see the acting out of the story of Ra and Aset. And Catherine is beginning to have conversations with Kasuf, and James is like, "You speak this language?" She was like, "Not really, but once Wasif said it was not Egyptian, it was Coptic, I started listening for the right vowel like combinations, and I just was able to pick some more of it up, which happens a little too quickly.
It does happen a little too quickly, yes.
But knowing her father's area of expertise, it does make sense that if anyone was going to be able to do it that quickly, it would be the two of them.
Yeah.
Or Danielle.
Right. Yes.
But then because she's having these conversations and she's speaking the Abydonian, she realizes that Brucha did not take her father on accident.
Yeah.
Which, like, did you ever really think it was an accident? Like, that was naive. So then we have a moment where they're flirting, and somehow it turns into a romantic movie, and everyone is convincing James and Catherine to bone, and they do. And I took 0 notes on that entire situation.
I feel like it was like, in the fan fiction sense, meant to be like a Captain Jack and Sam And they were trying to push that like idea, even though it was obviously Catherine. And
Yeah.
that's why I feel like that storyline even happened.
I felt like it was just to make Catherine's life even more tragic because now she's over too with men she could love in her life dying at the hands of the Stargate.
Yeah, but we've known about James for like 3 seconds and we don't care about him. We already know about Ernest at this point. So like,
Exactly. That was the other thing that was so hard for me. Like by the end, I liked James and I was sad that he
yeah,
was
he's
gonna die, that he
fine, but like,
died. But like I was like when we first the very first scene where she went to kiss him and I knew he wasn't Ernest, I was like, what is happening? I
yeah,
don't care about you. You're not Ernest.
right. That's exactly what I wrote down. Yeah. I was like,
Um,
I don't understand why this is happening. And I think that's all it was for. It was a tool for a story.
yep.
I don't think it mattered.
So then Asa oh, so then while they're like doing oh no, so then Asa and Baruch come to the village and there's this whole battle scene where she like explains how willing to die her people are for her and they have somebody fight the Nazi and then Baruch kills his own person to show that he also does not care. And then that is when Ava is officially does not give a single fuck about this man anymore. That was tragic.
Yep.
She was a character that I wished wouldn't have had to die.
I know. I know. I was rooting for her.
Um, then uh all the time that this whole ordeal is happening, Kosov is hiding with Catherine and James, and he's upset because he wants to be a part of fighting because they're his people. It's like his outpost. But they're like, you can't, that's the bad man and my father and
And you have to
whatever
survive
to
have
help us. Yeah.
whatever, you know.
And so then Kosov shows Catherine where the caves are. Um, and we have the most important moment of the entire movie where well no we don't have it quite yet but so he's going to take Catherine to where the caves are just because he that's where the symbols are back at the temple. Aset um, was given Catherine's hairpin and shows it to Langford and is like the other people that followed you here, should we kill them? Um, and he was like, no, that they won't be a problem. We prefer to fight our own battles. And he actually did that like in a really smooth way where it was not obvious that he like did not want them to die. I was like,
Right.
good for you. Like, good for you, Dr. Langford. That was ballsy.
Yeah.
Um, then we have a moment where Catherine like tries to beautifully convince Kosov not to be a slave anymore, and it's really like really beautiful propaganda because it clearly wasn't for the plot. It was just to say that to people.
Right.
Like it was little moments like that where I was like, okay, whatever. um when while they're on their way to the caves for this, Owasif and James are with the other people and they're like giving them a lesson on what Naquita is. And we learn how bad it could really be if the Nazis were to be able to take Naquita home to Earth with them.
Right.
Then we have the most important moment of the
Right.
entire movie where Catherine is in the cave and she takes the notes that she needs and then she promptly destroys the cartouche, setting up the entirety of Stargate. Like that one moment,
Right.
I was like, beautiful. Okay, fine.
Now we have Stargate. Yes.
I told my dad, I go, there are two things from the original movie that now make more sense because of this. And for those two things, I will accept this movie, even though I don't like it. One, we see the cartouche breaking. Great. Or, oh, I said we see the temple destruction and the cartouche breaking, which are two separate incidences, but are both important in the long run. Two, Kasuf being able to pick up English with Daniel as quickly as he did only makes sense if it wasn't the first time he saw it.
Right. Right.
Like that, that's it.
Yep. Yep.
Um, then Ra begins to reappear because why not?
Yeah.
Um, and Langford gives Brucha up to Assat, basically, tells him he's a traitor and that he is just trying to destroy her. And then we have like a weird action scene where like they're fighting and Assat won't step in because she's like, no, they prefer to fight their own battles. And then um, Catherine and Wasif and the boy that he's now apparently in love with that happened with absolutely no plot development whatsoever.
Right.
And James are all and Kasuf are all now back at the palace, and there's all this action stuff. And then Catherine shoots Brucha, but then she's going to kill him. And then Langford tells her she's a better person than that. And then Brucha is almost going to shoot somebody else. And then Eva is a badass and just gives him his just desserts and shoots him like 8 times. And I was like,
Yeah.
great.
Good for you.
Um, and then Langford is like, can we please just leave? And she's like, you can't leave. Like, you know things. And he's like, but this is then at least let my daughter leave. And she's like, oh, you have a daughter. My heart. I'm a mother. Because that was ever made any
Right.
fucking sense either.
Yeah.
And she wipes their minds, which it now explains how neither of them have any fucking idea that this Stargate works or Abydos exists. It's like when you write a whole book and then you're like, and it was all a dream.
Right.
So
And like
that's,
sometimes that works.
to be fair, that's why I really didn't care for this because there were some great moments. I liked having a story about Catherine in the past. I liked the introduction of Abydos and Kasuf, but for them to go through all of that and then be like, now you have no memory, like, come on.
I
You
know.
couldn't have done it a little bit better. But when she wipes her memory, she gives this whole speech about one day when you have enough power to actually destroy Ra, you will send back saviors with this pendant, which does actually you'll send back a team that has the power to destroy Ra with this pendant, which does actually kind of work because in the movie when she gives Daniel the pendant, she's like, I don't know why I need to give this to you, but I do. Like she
Yeah.
says that. So like, okay.
Mhm.
She Asset destroy or like wipes her mind and Langford's mind and Kasuf's mind and tells Kasuf to just go back to the village and save his people. And that's it for some reason. She like doesn't wipe the other three, and I don't know why. Also, Eva is dead at this point, I think. I don't know what happened to her. They didn't show what happens to her.
Yeah, she got shot, didn't she? Right after she shot the Nazi?
Oh, did she?
Did I make that
Okay.
up?
You might no, you might. That's what I'm saying. They never showed what happened to her after, so she must have. Like that's the only thing
Oh,
that
I
I can
thought like she shot him and then immediately got shot and was out.
probably,
Okay.
probably. I didn't take a note about it, and then I was thinking about the fact that they showed us the end result for everyone else, and I was like, man, what happened to Eva?
Yeah, I think she died.
Okay.
Bummer
So
for her.
then James gets the gate back up, and all of this is happening, and he still has all of his memory. So obviously, he's not making it back through the gate.
Right.
I did really appreciate the moment where the laser pointer went through the gate though and killed the Nazi on the other side. That was hysterical. Um,
Top notch.
then the traitor lady who brought Ra back kills James after he pushes Catherine and Langford back through the gate. And Wasif decides not to follow them and stay with his love, but then Ra kidnaps both of them and turns them into the guards that then die in the 1984 movie. So tragic.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
so that's Origins.
And like I would have liked to watch this before the 1994 film, but also before I saw anything else about Stargate.
Yeah.
Because I didn't like the 1994 film, and I do feel like this set it up a bit more, and I would have enjoyed it better had I known at least like
Eh,
three more things, you know, like I
right.
think. Um, but I liked the movie, and I also like the movie like as a standalone, not necessarily canon, as we said.
Yeah. I don't know. I felt very meh about the whole thing. I thought that there were some good points. I didn't think that any of the acting was bad. I did not, like I said, I didn't like the pacing, but that doesn't mean I didn't like the actual story.
Right.
Um, but I did just think it was a little cliche and a little not right for what it was trying to be.
And that's totally fair. Um,
But as we always do with one of these, who do you want to punch?
you know, I didn't care enough about the characters by the end because it, was a disconnected miniseries. But
Yeah,
definitely the Nazi, the leader Nazi.
for sure, for sure.
Yeah,
That was a good
definitely
one.
punch him. He was probably the one I wanted to punch the most.
I think I want to punch the traitor chick who abandoned Offset for Ra, because, like, fuck
Mm,
off.
fair. Yeah.
Yeah, that was mine. And who would be your MVP?
I mean, I guess Catherine. She's the only one I really like
I'm gonna give
cared
it to
about.
James
Yeah.
because I'm gonna give it to James for going back and making sure that Catherine and Langford got through the gate before he did, even though it meant
Fair.
dying. Because, like, good for him.
Yeah,
Noble sacrifice.
absolutely. So I have a logistics question for you.
Absolutely.
Do you think this movie made the idea that you could go back and do more origin stories in the future possible if you have the original, not like the original directors, but like associated people to work on them as like a big, like a box office film? Or do you think that the fact that it came out and was so poorly received that ruined the chance ever in the future of having anything similar?
I would unfortunately have to say the second, because I've seen a lot of things, especially in the last year in 2022 was 25 years of this since the series came out.
Mm-hmm.
And there was a lot of stuff online about 25th anniversary things for the beginning of Stargate, and people are trying to get Stargate rebooted all the time. If you live on Stargate Reddit, you will know that, like, people are desperate for more Stargate content. Um, and like Amanda Tapping and Richard Dean Anderson just like met up at a Comic-Con in Paris last year, and oh, man, he is not looking good. It broke my heart.
No.
Um
Wow.
but they like, and they still love the show, and people like have a lot of love for it. But because that was the first attempt that, and I think if it had stayed a web series that didn't actually have any like
Following.
association, um, it would be different. But because it's gotten lumped into the canon instead of like being what it was, it's kind of left people with a sour taste in their mouth for letting anyone outside of the original creation team to do anything. And I think that that has kind of gotten rid of any hope we could have of origin stuff.
I think that's
Because,
fair because I think
and
because you, yeah, go ahead.
I think part of it's hard because also, like, who are the characters that you really want to see what happened to them before the beginning of the series? Like, so many of the main characters, you get so much of their backstory. Like,
Yeah.
we know everything that happened to Daniel before he found the
Right.
Stargate. We know Teal'c's life as a Jaffa. Like, we know Jack losing his family. Like, we wouldn't want to see movies about those. Who would we want to see a movie about?
I mean, maybe Talk,
Maybe
maybe
Braytok would be an
Ernest.
interesting choice. Ernest, Ernest would be hard because what did he do? It would be a one-man movie on an empty planet. Like that, you know what I mean? Like, because it wouldn't,
But I meant like before that even.
but I don't think that they would have enough to do
Okay.
that. He was just like a kid who got picked to be on a science team. You know what I mean? The
Mm-hmm.
only person that we know in the show up to date, like in the first two seasons of the show, Braytok potentially would be a good choice, but I think the only person that I think would have a valid desire among fans for their backstory is Hammond, and that would not make an interesting movie.
Yeah. Maybe I don't know if we're gonna get more of the backstory of these people, but maybe like Sharae would maybe make an interesting one if we don't know, like, and her upbringing in this place with Kusef now we have like
That's true. I just
or
it's
like
one of those
the
it's one of those things where in order to make these people's backstories interesting, you have to make shit up that didn't really happen. Like this
right.
story, if we had just been a movie about what happens with Catherine and her dad working on this thing in the 25 years between finding it and opening it, it would have been a terrible movie.
Yeah.
Instead, they made it a Nazi hunting movie and it created a plot hole and then solved the plot hole by erasing the whole
Yeah.
movie. You know what I
And
mean?
and I wonder if like seeing about like a movie about just the Nox, about just Asgard, like doing spin-offs. I don't know.
No, that might be more interesting. I could say that those would probably be more interesting, but those would also take a lot more work because the
Hmm.
lore is so much part of the show that like you would have to have everybody involved in the original creation sign off on your stuff for it to actually be like legitimate in any way. And I can't imagine some of these guys after what happened with this being cool with that.
I think that's fair too. No, I think you're right. I was just playing devil's advocate, but I think
No, and I think that's a valid discussion because we see a lot of things like with people trying to do the past. Like, I mean, think about the fact that, like, in the Star Trek universe, like, I know you're not a huge Star Trek person, but in the Star Trek universe, the show that is on right now
and
is,
I'm not a huge Star Trek person. I've never seen
I know.
it.
But like in the Star Trek universe, the show that is on right now that people are really, really liking is the Captain before Captain Kirk. Like Kirk
Card,
meeting
right?
this. No, Picard is way later. Um,
Well, that's one right
uh,
now too.
Yes, that is on right now, but like people don't like it as much as the other one. The other one that is on is called. Oh man, Dan would be so mad if I knew he knew that I forgot what this fucking show was called. Strange New Worlds. That's what it's called.
Oh yeah.
And
That
Strange New
one
Worlds.
just came out last year, right?
Yeah, and
Okay, because Picard's been out a couple of years now.
yes, this one just came out last year. It's had one season, but it's about Captain Pike and and Kirk gets introduced later in the season as not a captain yet, and this is and like Spock, and this is Spock and the captain before Kirk like doing their thing, and like Kirk is coming up. So like Uhura is on like the original cast, like Uhura, Spock, Kirk. They're all characters on the show, and it's what happens before the original series. But it's done really, really well.
Right.
And so people are really liking that. Russell T Davies just said in an interview yesterday that now that he's in charge of Doctor Who, he has every intention of bringing spin-offs back.
I saw that, yeah.
Like, and people are, and think about how well the like the
Where did
tales,
where
the
did Russell
tales.
T Davies come from again? I know, like
He did Doctor Who before. He brought Doctor Who back in 2005, and then he left the show, and now he's back again.
right, okay. I was like, because he was on Doctor Who when I watched it before, and then I was like, I forgot who was the middleman? Stephen Moffat.
Moffat, yeah.
Yeah, I was like, who was in between? That's
Yes.
why.
Um, and then like I mean, Tales of the Jedi, it was like that 6 episode miniseries of 19-minute like cartoons, but it was like Count Dooku between being a Jedi and being a Sith Lord, and Ahsoka before she became a Jedi. Like, and like people are living for this like prequel, spin-off,
Right.
like that's why how these worlds are expanding. And Stargate never did that well.
And they don't really have room for a prequel.
Right. They don't have room for a prequel, but you're right. Things like a story about just the Asgard, things about a story about just the Nox, things with a story about just the ancients who we know exist, but we don't know anything about them yet. Those would be really interesting, but they wrote themselves into a corner with the way that they created the characters in the sense that like, and I don't think that they have the public sitting like they don't sit in the place in the public that Stargate and or Star Trek and Star Wars do to be able to have this
I think that's
much
true.
of a lore. And that's sad because I think it
I
could
think,
be interesting.
but I wonder if they do it in the sense of, I mean, especially if you look at, I mean, Marvel obviously has Asgard, has all these things, and they're
Yeah.
basing a lot of it, off of the comics, but they use some of the original like lore and stuff. And
Hmm.
they do well. I wonder if Stargate took it in the sense of like, this is a Stargate spinoff, but we're not going to write into it that changes the show, but that deep dives into the original lore a bit more because I don't know that anything is done that enough other than like the original Stargate, I guess. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't know. I would like that part if you get more into the like
I
ancient lore.
know, I agree. I just don't know. Um, I don't know if they have left themselves the way to do that. And I think that this would be a really good conversation to have
At the
again
end.
once we've seen
Yeah.
everything and once
I
we
think
have,
that's fair.
because I also like I know way more about this than
Right.
you do, but I still haven't seen Stargate Universe, which is
Right.
the end of the series. So I don't know where it goes.
Yeah. And that's fair.
So
And this is
yeah.
me talking about 2 seasons in. These are things that could happen. And maybe some of them did. Maybe they included some of this information further on.
Right, right. And
And
I
that's
also
why,
am like trying to
right,
be as spoiler free as possible, but
right.
I have at least the 5 seasons of Atlantis, and I haven't seen every episode of Stargate SG-1 ever in my life, but I have
Seen a lot.
probably at least within the 8 seasons we have left to watch. I have probably at least 4 seasons worth of
Right.
episodes that I've seen. So I'm talking about 9 seasons worth of TV that I can't tell you about.
Right.
Um,
Yes. Correct. Correct.
so,
Excellent.
well, with that, next week we will go back to our regularly scheduled Stargate SG-1, beginning with season 3, which is the second part of the
Finale.
finale two-parter, which I almost forgot because it's been so long since
Right.
I
It's been
watched
some months
it.
since we watched it. Yeah, of course.
Yeah. But yeah, so if you like Courtney said earlier, if you loved the movie, you can reach out to her. If you hated the movie, reach out to me. But if you have just any thoughts in general about ways that the plot holes did or did not fix themselves, go ahead
And
and
if
send.
you're on the same level as me and have only watched 2 seasons and have ideas about spinoffs, please send those.
Yeah.
But only if you're only at the same level as me because I don't want spoilers.
And you can send any of that to our email at deafandaliens@gmail.com or to any of the social medias at Deaf and Aliens. You can follow me everywhere at EMKAY_superstar.
And you can follow me at CE Cloud 13.
And we will see you guys on Thursday for our Thriller Thursday, where we are in it in season 5 of Bates Motel.
We are indeed in it.
Bye.
See ya.